There's a lot of things unknown about the Orlando Magic these days, but there's one thing we do know. Thursday night's loss was not Orlando Magic basketball. Unfortunately, it has become such today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is January 31st, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, you see the score. You know the score. I'm recording this at night because it cannot wait until the morning. The Orlando Magic fall to the Portland Trailblazers 119-90 in another game filled with frustration, and most importantly, another game that departs from who the Magic are and who the Magic need to be. Why this is a crisis now coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. You can make Locked On Magic even bigger part of your day with the Locked On Magic Daily Newsletter, the one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. And start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic Newsletter. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here in 1 week at least. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. When the Orlando Magic were the talk of the league in November and December, one thing defined them, or two things defined them, a couple things defined them. It was their intense effort. Doc Rivers said before one of the games against the Magic this year, the Magic were like a gnat. You couldn't brush them away. You couldn't get them off of you. The Orlando Magic may lose games, but they were never going to quit. You were always going to feel them. You were always going to know you faced the Orlando Magic. And even if ultimately their talent would betray them and they wouldn't be able to get over that hump, every piece, every part of that 48 minutes was going to be a struggle. The Orlando Magic went on the road to the Los Angeles Lakers. They trailed late in that game with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, two All-Stars, dominating and having one of their best games of the season. And Franz Wagner came through with the game-winning three. It felt like everything was working. But even when Franz was out, the Magic trailed by 25 to the Miami Heat without Franz, without Paolo, without Jalen Suggs. And they stormed back for one of the biggest comebacks in Magic history. A game that truly made the Magic feel invincible because their effort, their identity, their defense was impregnable, was certain, was undeniable. Their very next game, they were down 15 to the defending champion Boston Celtics. They got Suggs back for that game at least. But they stormed back. Their two-way player, Trevelin Queen, hitting humongous shots to deliver the Magic a big win. I said then, quit questioning, start believing. Because this team felt like they had this deeply embedded culture, this never quit culture, this defensive identity that could not be cracked. Take their best players away. They knew who they were. And they would play that way every night. And yes, some nights they wouldn't have enough offense. Some nights it wouldn't all be there. But you knew the Magic were always going to be the hardest working team on the court. There's a lot to say, and we're going to say a little bit about it here toward the end of the show. There's a lot to say about what the Magic don't have and what the Magic ultimately will need to be a championship level team, which is where this team wants to go. But it all starts with their defense. It all starts with this identity that they have, this understanding of what makes them tick. And that's what's been missing throughout January. That's what's been missing as the Magic have sunk down the standings, now at 24 and 25, 7th in the Eastern Conference. That's what is continually missing about this Magic team. Frankly, let's get this out of the way. I don't care that they lost to the Portland Trail Blazers. Portland is playing really good basketball right now. If you thought this, I know I said this is a game the Magic should win. I predicted them to win. I believe they would win. But I'm sure I said this yesterday when I previewed the West Coast trip. If you are just counting the Portland Trail Blazers as a win because of their record, you aren't paying attention. They're playing really well right now, and the Magic are not. It's not that they lost. It's the way they lost again. The way that they have lost so many of these games. The Miami game, the Milwaukee game, the Boston game. The resiliency, the intensity, the energy, the effort, the defense, it's not there anymore. And this Magic team has to have all of that to be successful. This Magic team has to have all of it to win. Plain and simple. We know the offense is going to suck. We know the offense is going to be bad. We know they're not going to be able to make shots. They weren't making shots in November and December when they were winning games. When they were competing, when they wouldn't get blown out, when you couldn't shake them. They need shooting to win in the playoffs, obviously. I'm not sitting here pretending like that's not an immediate and necessary need. But it isn't the most important thing for this team. Orlando went 4-11 in January. Their defense plummeted, just like their offense did. But more than that, they allowed the poor shooting to dictate their defensive energy. They allowed other elements to take away the central tenet of who they are. When they met resistance, when the shots stopped falling, they stopped defending. They stopped playing hard. They started getting frustrated. They abandoned their game plan. They abandoned who they are. The Orlando Magic had the right response in this game. They went up 10-0. The ball was moving. They were defending well. Everything was working great. And then Portland started to etch away at the lead. They started to take little pieces off of it. They found their rhythm in shooting. And while Orlando was scoring plenty, Portland was getting to the foul line, hitting threes, and slowly making up that deficit. By the time the Magic's first cold snap hit in the second quarter, the Magic couldn't get the rope back. They went from up 10 at the beginning of the game to down 9 at the half. A 19-point turnaround within the half. And then when they came out of the third quarter, just needing a halftime to maybe regroup, they came out flat. They came out pressing. They didn't fix their fouling problem after giving up 16 free throws, 8 in each quarter to the Portland Trail Blazers. After a really solid half not turning the ball over, they turned it over 7 times trying to make things happen. Instead of running their offense, instead of running their defense and using their defense to create offense. They're fouling so much, it didn't matter. This Magic team's going to foul. They know that. It's who they are. That's not the important thing. They allowed it to affect their defense. They were not the more physical team. They were not the more intense team. They were not the team winning every 50-50 ball. They were not the team that won the effort plays. That was the Portland Trail Blazers. Credit to them. They shot the ball well. They made some tough shots to gain confidence, but they shot the ball well. And Orlando was not anywhere near disruptive enough to make a difference. That's not who the Orlando Magic are. But as I said, throughout this month of January, that's been the pattern. Getting their stars back has not changed things. Yeah, Paolo, Banchero, and Franz Wagner can bail them out a little bit. Paolo is very clearly still working his way back to full force, and this may be who he is for the rest of the season until he can get to the offseason and reconfigure himself. Franz Wagner is still playing under a minute restriction, but has a lot of the same uncertainty. And their uncertainty as the leaders of this team are trickling down to everyone else. All the misses are causing them to second guess themselves on both ends. And that's something that just cannot happen. This team has a small margin for error because they don't score enough. They have to defend like maniacs to give themselves a chance. And yeah, losing Jalen Suggs lowers this team's energy. Not going to pretend otherwise. But the Magic had this. It didn't matter who was in or out of the lineup. It did not matter how poorly they shot. They competed. They defended. They gave themselves the opportunity to win if they can get the offense to do so. Over the last 15 games, that hasn't happened. Over the last 15 games, the Magic have let other teams dictate to them. Over the last 15 games, the Magic have faced adversity, faced struggle, and wilted and backed down instead of puffing their chest out and getting right back in the fight. The Magic know what they have to do. They know who they are. They know what their identity is. They know what their formula for success is. But over the last 15 games, over the last month, the Magic have lost that identity. And until they get that back, and yet Jalen Suggs coming back whenever he comes back from this quad contusion, it's going to help a ton. He is just a bouncing ball of energy that this team desperately needs. Until the Magic get that back, winning is going to be really, really hard. Really, really hard. Let's go through the final box score. Let's put this game to rest as we start to look forward to what comes next for the Orlando Magic. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends from Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. It's only available TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. We're going to run through the final box score here in the second segment so we can talk about what comes next because this game's done. It's over. Let's put it to bed. It stunk. It was bad. It's been part of a long pattern of bad games for this Orlando Magic team. Let's move forward. Let's move on. The Magic just simply are not getting a lot of scoring from outside their two main players. And, Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner are still very, very clearly working themselves back into shape and working themselves back into the flow of things. And frankly, still gaining confidence in their body. I've said this a million times. Teams gain confidence from their leaders. Teams go as their leaders go. And I would say Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero are unsure of themselves and with good reason. And so that, I think, trickles down to everyone else. But the bottom line is the Magic have to find scoring. They have to find guys who will put the ball in the basket and give them that little bit of energy. Franz Wagner was fine in this game. 24 points, 8 for 17 shooting, 1 for 5 from 3, 7 for 8 from the foul line. He was forcing some things in the third and fourth quarters as the league really got away from the Magic. But again, he generally makes good decisions. He generally is able to get to the rim. He cuts really well. Again, the Magic really came out strong early on. I think both Paolo and Franz had 14 points combined. Paolo had 8 points in the first quarter. Franz at 6 on 3 for 4 shooting. That means he's 5 for 13 the rest of the game. The Magic are going to trust their main playmakers and their main decision makers, and that's Franz and Paolo. But Cole Anthony really said it well after the game. Sometimes when the team is struggling, they're leaning too much or trusting Franz and Paolo to bail them out. Paolo Banchero was fine in this game too, generally. 21 points, 10 for 23 shooting. He missed all 4 of his 3-pointers, 1 for 3 from the foul line. He really struggled to get to the foul line. 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 turnovers. I thought Paolo was focused really hard on getting to his spots, but his spot is that like short corner baseline. And it's really easy to get trapped there. And again, I still think he's reading defenses really slowly. And again, I don't think he had one moment where he bowled his way to the basket against a smaller defender, but I just don't think he has the strength or the ability right now to kind of match up with players of a similar kind of size and build as him. Like Tumani Kamara, good young defender, really did a good job defensively on him. They put DeAndre Ayton on him on a few occasions. Ayton did a really good job keeping him from the basket. And the more Paolo needs mid-range jumpers, and he's a good enough mid-range jumper. But he has to get to the basket, get to the foul line. And that was a real struggle in this game. And again, credit to Portland's defense. They got some long defenders, Denny Avdia, Tumani Kamara, DeAndre Ayton, Shaden Sharp, Delano Banton, Jabari Walker even. They do have some players. It's a weird matchup because they can match Orlando's size a little bit, or at least present size for the Magic to deal with that they're not always going to see with these players. I think too, and Franz was guilty of this too, so I don't want to single out Paolo, but when the Magic needed baskets or needed good possessions, especially in the second and third quarters, Paolo made bad decisions. He made bad shot decisions. And look, Cole Anthony did too. Cole Anthony was 16 points, 6 for 15 shooting, 3 for 7 from 3. A lot of times just forcing his way to the basket and taking really tough flip shots over defenders, not trusting the pass or collapsing the defense and kicking out. There is a bit of a trust problem with this team. And again, it's not that no one doesn't like each other. It's these guys aren't hitting shots. Like Orlando was 34 for 81, 42%, 5 for 26 from 3. You're just like, again, they're not like Orlando took only 26 threes. Last game, they took 40 something threes against this Portland team. They settled. They weren't settling for threes in this game, but you got to make threes. You got to make open shots when you get them. And again, it's a broken record. And I don't think shooting is everything. It's important. It lowers the margin for error, but this team can win with bad shooting. They got to make shots right now. The confidence of this team is just rock bottom because they feel themselves missing these shots, and then they start pressing, and then they start forcing things. Outside of Paolo, Franz, and Cole, Wendell Carter was the only other player to score in double figures. He had 12 points on 3 for 7 shooting. He was 6 for 6 from the foul line, 7 rebounds. I loved how Wendell attacked the glass, attacked the paint, got to the foul line, really used his pump fakes well to draw defenders to him, get them off balance. They were biting on them for some reason. Dell did a very, very good job in this game. But it's hard to find anyone else who played well. Gary Harris played well. 3 points, 1 for 2 shooting from 3 in his first game back after prolonged absence. But Goga Batante only 2 points and 3 rebounds in 18 minutes. He started, and was effective early, but non-factor the rest of the game. Anthony Black went scoreless in 19 minutes, 0 for 3. The Magic's guards were just completely useless, to be perfectly honest. Anthony Black, not really giving you much offensively. Cole Anthony forcing too many things offensively and a complete liability on defense. Again, not for a lack of effort. Like he's trying to make plays, but teams victimized him. He's still a better option in this game than Anthony Black, to be perfectly honest. AB got eaten up on screens, let Scoot Henderson come around corners, get to the basket. He finished with 23.7 assists, even though he shot 7 for 16, so there was some good defense there. Scoot Henderson lived in the paint, got 1 foot in the paint, was able to find DeAndre Ayton on dump downs. Ayton had 22 points, 8 rebounds, 4 offensive rebounds for him. The short rolls for Ayton, hit that mid-range jumper that he has, just a really just bad defense. The Blazers shot 52.6% in this game. They posted a 132 offensive rating. That is the second worst defensive rating the Magic have had all season long. The worst was against the Boston Celtics a few weeks ago in Boston. But again, you just go down the list of Magic players. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, only 4 points, 2 for 5 shooting. Just could not get him going. Again, the ball wasn't moving, so he's not going to get going. Tristan da Silva went scoreless, did not take a shot in 20 and a half minutes. Jonathan Isaac had some nice moments in the first quarter. He had 5 rebounds, including 3 offensive rebounds. Finished with just those 4 points. Not a lot of scoring from him. The Magic's rotation is shorter, but the bench scoring that they got in the game against Miami that kept them afloat when Paolo and Franz struggled, they gave no support to Paolo and Franz. Like, Paolo and Franz had to do everything. And again, the Magic, Cole Anthony admitted this, they kind of expected them to bail them out. And, the reality just might be this season, because of the injuries, because they're still kind of working their way back, or at least for the next few weeks, maybe until the All-Star break when they get a rest and can kind of reassess where they are. Until then, like, these guys aren't our guys. Like, they're you see hints of it, but they're just not consistent enough. And so the Magic need to find ways to create offense elsewhere. And again, a big place for that is defense. Orlando forced 14 turnovers. A big part of this Magic team defense is forcing turnovers. They're disruptive. They use their length. They get in passing lanes. They score only 8 points off of 14 turnovers. 8 points off of 14 turnovers. So you had 5 fast break points on 2 for 8 shooting. Portland had 29 points off 16 turnovers. They turned every Magic mistake, and the Magic had 7 turnovers for 19 points in the third quarter alone. Portland had 21 fast break points, 5 for 9 shooting on fast break points. This was a shellacking. This was a more dominant, this was a more engaged, this was a more spirited. This was, the Magic said after the game, they got punked. They were just the worst team. The Blazers wanted this game more. And again, I don't like saying want because I don't think the Magic didn't want this game. But the Blazers put more effort in. And when the Magic reached back to try and get that effort, it wasn't there. The precision wasn't there. The defense wasn't there. We want to believe this is not who the Magic are. Because we've seen and know the Magic can be better. But the reality is this is who the Magic are. After scoring 35 points in the first quarter and winning that quarter 35-28, Orlando scored 18, 20, and 17 in the final 3 quarters. That is 55 points over the last 3 quarters after scoring 35 and looking really good in that first quarter. Even up 7, even giving up 28, even allowing Portland some rhythm to cut into their deficit, Orlando looked fine. It was just like, okay, they're fine. And then they shoot 7 for 23 in the second quarter. They give up 12 for 19 shooting, another 8 free throws. The Magic, to me, like I said this at the half, it wasn't about the offense. It's about the defense. If the Magic defend with any bit of intensity or physicality without fouling, they're in this game. They give themselves a chance to find their offense again. Instead, they come out of the locker room down by 9. They're pressing. They're making more mistakes, and they allow Portland to run away with this game. Portland smelled blood, and they went for the kill. That's what the Magic used to do. That's who the Magic want to be. That's who the Magic know they can be. But it's not who they are. Not right now, at least. And so after this 119-90 loss where the Magic trailed by as much as 30 points, final margin, where they trailed by as much as 30 points, not the final margin, it ended up being 20. When the Magic trailed by 30 points, what are the Magic going to do about it? It's getting time to have that discussion. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, and endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, tails never fails, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's just icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, an official partner of Super Bowl 59. So this game is done. It's over. We've recapped it. We've talked about it. We know the issues. We know the problems. They've been repeated. They have been ongoing, and they are unacceptable. Plain and simple. I'm an optimist. I want to believe in the best versions of this team, and I see good in a lot of things. But the problems this team is facing are not new. The conclusions that we're reaching are not new. Yes, the Orlando Magic need to add shooting. Yes, the Orlando Magic need more offensive depth. They have too many players who are one-dimensional on the defensive end and not enough players who just know how to put the ball in the basket and can do so with some level of efficiency or create for others on this team. Yes, that player is not on this team right now. The Orlando Magic are in free fall. They've lost 13 of their last 18 games, if I'm not mistaken, and 20 of their last 28, if I'm not mistaken. They've lost a lot of games. They haven't won consecutive games in more than a month since Christmas. And while there are still lots of opportunities ahead, as I detailed on yesterday's episode of Locked On Magic, no one's going to hand them victories. The Utah Jazz have the second worst defense in the league and the worst defense in the league over the last 10 games. Like a lot of people say, oh, Portland has a 25th ranked defense in the league. Portland's been top 10 in defensive rating over their last 10 games. They've been pretty good. I said this somewhat jokingly, but Portland is probably the second best team the Magic are facing on this road trip. So not a good loss. I'm not going to pretend that it is. Certainly being non-competitive in the game is far more concerning. But we know this Magic team has serious flaws. Flaws we hoped Paolo, Banchero, and Franz Wagner would paper over for the rest of the season. That doesn't appear to be happening. In the 10 games since Paolo Banchero returned, the Magic have just 2 wins. That's a problem, right? That's not good, right? The fact of the matter is, we have reached this point. We have reached this inflection point. One loss and one bad loss isn't a reason to do anything. Everybody has bad nights. It's the repeated and constant similarities of these losses that should alarm or should create some urgency within this front office. It's time to do something about this. If the Orlando Magic are going to accomplish any of their goals, and by any of their goals, I mean make the playoffs. That is the bare minimum. I feel like I am a very lenient grader here. I've told everyone success this season is only measured by making it to the second round, but losing in the first round isn't necessarily a failure. But we're coming to this conclusion. The Orlando Magic are not going to match last year. 47 wins. They're 24-25 right now. To get to 47 wins, they'd have to go, 23-10? It's not impossible, I suppose. But they almost have to double their wins in the last 2/3 of the season. It's not the way this team is playing. Do you have confidence that they'll be able to do that? And if that's the case, Do you have confidence that this team can beat the Bucks, can beat the Pacers, can beat the Cavs, the Knicks, the Celtics? We've known for a good chunk of this year that the Magic probably didn't have enough to be considered among the title contenders. Even understanding the players that they were missing, it didn't feel like the Magic were in the same weight class, and the shooting is a big part of that. So we always knew from very early on in this season, and probably even from the beginning of the season, that there was going to have to be something injected into this team. That the Magic were going to need some external additions to get over that hump, to get into that contending class. But right now, frankly, the Magic are fighting for their playoff lives. Because it's not only Cleveland, Boston, New York we got to worry about. It's now Milwaukee, Indiana, Miami, and now Detroit, Atlanta, maybe Chicago, probably not Chicago. Philadelphia is hanging out there in 11th. Here's something that's not going to make you happy. The Magic are closer to the 11th place Sixers right now than the 4th place Bucks. If you believe Orlando is capable of catching the 4th place Bucks, they're 4.5 games out, or 5 games out now, then you also have to acknowledge that the Sixers can catch them too. That is a sobering thought. This season has, I don't want to say has gone off the rails. We can understand injuries are a big piece of this puzzle and an important piece of context to add. But as much as this team wants to say we have enough, they only have enough if they put the effort in, if they play with the intensity, if they play with the defense that they need to play with. And the fact of the matter is, for the last month, they haven't. Not consistently enough. For the last month, we have to acknowledge that this team has played like a tanking team, like a team that does not have a postseason ahead of them. The Magic burnt their cushion to be the 4 or 5 seed, to be in the play-in chase. That's not where we want to be. I don't think the Magic will do anything to quote-unquote save this season. This season is ultimately not important except to tell them what I just told you. They're not good enough to break into the contending tier. Not only are they not good enough to break into the contending tier, they have fallen back into the play-in tier. And again, injuries are a big part of that. So if we take the injuries out, at best, yeah, this team's probably a little bit better, but they've also probably stagnated. That tells you it's time. That tells you it's time to make a deal. That tells you it's time to add the thing that you're missing, to maybe take a risk on a player that will help you, that you can teach and bring into your culture. The trade deadline is 1 week, less than a week now. And the Magic continue to fall in the standings, continue to not live up to their billing and their potential. And it's not entirely their fault. They don't have the personnel to compete every night. They don't have the personnel for their defense to take a night off, or for their defense to be anything but elite. And to me, that realization, that understanding, the lack of consistency on that defensive end over the last month, that tells me this team can't afford to wait. Yes, make a deal that helps you in the big picture and in the long run. It's not just about this season. It has to be about the next 3 seasons. I don't want a 1-year rental. That does nothing. A 1-year rental, expending assets on a 1-year guy just to get in the playoffs this year, that's pointless. But it's time to do something. It's time to do something to make this season valuable, to make this season worth it, to make this season at least bearable for the results that they have. It's time to make your move to make this team better, because we know it has to be better. And nothing's going to happen until the trade deadline, so I'm not sitting here saying do a trade tomorrow. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this Magic team cannot afford to wait until the offseason. It's time to make the trade. It's time to enact the plan. It's time to add something to this team that they don't have and elevate this team with better personnel. I love this team to death. They are a great bunch. They have fought and clawed their way, and maybe they've just run out of gas. That says it all too, to be perfectly honest, but maybe they just don't have enough to get to the finish line. That's okay. It's okay to admit that. Every team has its limits. Once you discover that limit, then it's time for change. The Magic have discovered their limit with this roster. And hopefully by Thursday, we will see some change. Because there's still so much for this team to accomplish. There's still so much for this team to do. There's still so much that this team must do. And the fact that so much of it can get derailed by an injury to Jalen Suggs, or an off night by Paolo, or an off night by Franz, or that this defense isn't as cemented as we thought it was. That tells you that this Magic team is ready for more. Is ready to take that next step, as difficult as that decision might be. The Magic cannot let this trade deadline pass without improving this roster. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all affiliate podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. I'll have my 3 takeaways from Thursday's loss. Hopefully that will be up around noon. I can't promise. I've got a little bit more work to do here at 3:30 in the morning. West Coast games are fun, aren't they? You can check that out at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. As if all that's not enough, you can check out the Locked On Magic Daily newsletter, the one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. The Orlando Magic fall once again to the Portland Trail Blazers, 119-90. We'll be back again on Saturday night after the Magic take on the Utah Jazz to recap that game, see if the Magic can bounce back against the Jazz. We'll see. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.